And good morning from Philadelphia, Frank here, or good afternoon from Philadelphia. Sorry about that.
And James here from Westchester, New York.
And we're ready to go with another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. Today we've got Simeon Hein with us to talk about a number of different things: UFOs, remote viewing, crop circles. James, let's not waste the good man's time, and let's get right to it.
Yes, sir. So, it's a good thing we got Simeon on today. I want to say that more so nowadays than even just a few years ago, people have been on the consciousness wave of things, and have been looking at the deeper aspects of ufology, UFOs, and what it represents, and the high strangeness involved with it. And Simeon happens to have a great deal of great information on that. So he's on YouTube, and he has a website. Simeon, why don't you introduce yourself real quick so people know who you are?
Well, hey guys, how's it going today? And thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, my background's in sociology and statistics. I used to teach statistics at a university, and I got involved in remote viewing in 1996, partly as a skeptic. Almost, I mean, not hard skeptic, kind of soft. I was open, but I didn't think the average person had any psychic ability. And, that was my launching pad for a lot of things, because it turned out, I was wrong. It works. It's real. And that meant a lot of other things I had learned in school, in 27 years of school, must be also wrong if RV was real. It meant a lot of other phenomena were real that we had all been taught weren't real. You know what I mean? So that was a pretty big shift.
Just jumping in real quick, you're saying that 96 time roughly. That's about the time that it first got my attention too. I think there was a book by Jim Schnabel, a couple of TV documentaries. Is that what got your attention in the first place, or something else?
No, it was a class with Dr. Courtney Brown he's of Emory University, and he had opened up his own RV Research Institute, Remote Viewing Research Training Institute. He, keep in mind, guys, in 1995, it was declassified. And
Project Stargate.
Yeah, Project Stargate was declassified and the Ted Koppel show had something on it in 95, around that time period. And all of a sudden, the people who have been involved in the military program were teaching classes in it. One of the first was Ed Dames. And Courtney had taken one of Ed's classes. I mean, Ed taught one-on-one the way Ingo Swann, his mentor, had taught. Ingo taught some group classes, but a lot of it was one-on-one. So Courtney had studied with Ed, and they were going to work together. But then, for whatever reason, Courtney decided to do it on his own. And he started teaching in Atlanta. I heard him on community radio here in Boulder, Colorado, KGNU, which is a great, community radio station. And I thought, what is this stuff? And part of me couldn't believe it. He was describing viewing things at a distance, going to other planets with your mind, viewing things on Mars in the past. And my kind of academic brain, I mean, I was kind of open to this, and I thought, it just kind of hit me, guys. Like, what is he talking about? I went and got his book. I put it back on the shelf and almost walked out of the store, the Boulder bookstore. I thought, this is just got to be, but a little voice in my head, do you know that little voice that says, go back and get the book?
Yeah.
Right? That's all. It was a feeling, and I just obeyed. Whatever that was. I went back and plunked down my $20 in cash and bought the book, and I just thought, this is fascinating. So to keep a long story short, at the end of the book, there was an 800 number to call him. So he said, we have classes. So I thought, part of me said, let's just go all the way and see if this is real or not. So I called, and he called back, and he said, we got one space left in our May class in 1996, and that's how it started.
And that was the Farsight Institute?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're into the remote viewing now. How do you make the leap from remote viewing into UFOs?
Well, it has to do with target selection and a lot of other things. I mean, Courtney had an interest in UFOs. So by the end of the first week in the beginner class, we weren't really viewing UFOs. I don't remember directly. We were viewing kind of more esoteric types of things. And I believe it's when I came back for his advanced class that he had us start viewing some UFOs and crop circles and things like that.
Even then, though, during this initial course that you went through, you're getting enough feedback that you're feeling, yeah, there is something to this. Something must click.
No. Thanks a lot, Frank. Let's not jump ahead too quickly. I saw results in a couple of days that defied logic. Okay. It just was not in my belief system that you could really accurately describe a picture that you wouldn't see until later. But I was able to do it with a picture of Cancun, Mexico, that was shockingly good. And it just was too accurate. My impressions were too accurate. The drawing was just right. But a lot of people got those same results during that 8-day class. And I'm not saying that I was totally happy with getting those results. I mean, let's be honest, guys. When you do something new, there's a part of you that wants to confirm what you already believe. And I thought it isn't going to work, but it did work. But I didn't know how it did it. So I kind of felt, wow, and yet I'm feeling confused. But that's kind of a good state to be in, too, because it means, hey, maybe you were wrong with your idea about how reality works. Maybe there's other things going on in a big way that no one told you about. And that's what it leads you to start asking, the types of questions it gets you to start asking, which include when the topic, obviously people who are interested in this are also interested in UFOs, and that topic comes up. It just starts bringing you into that topic, and you think, hey, maybe there's more to it. Now, eventually, I'll tell you what really made the jump for me, since that was your question. It wasn't just these viewing targets, because they're not verifiable. You could view a picture of a UFO or Roswell. You could just write it down in words, like a cue on a page, and have the viewer view it. And we viewed some of those targets. It was more meeting people who came to Farsight Institute who had worked at NASA. And I wrote about this in Black Swan Ghosts, my most recent book about encountering UFO witnesses. The real first two for me were two guys that had worked at NASA. One in the film department. Well, he was a contractor to convert all the 16 millimeter film into video. I believe he did this for them in like the 80s or something, when video was starting to become more popular. And he said to us, there are structures on the moon. I saw that in the 16 millimeter film that was never shown to the public.
Oh, wow.
Not only are there structures, there are buildings and bombed out glass structures. He said there must have been a war on the moon. But, I thought, sure. But at the same time, this guy had a lot of credibility. He was the only person to do this for NASA. And he had seen all the 16 millimeter film. He said there are structures there. You could see them with telescopes. Then there was another guy that worked as a civilian astronaut. The civilian astronauts are the people that go through all the astronaut training, but they never leave the atmosphere for whatever reason. They test and they do a lot of stuff, and they could be alternates and substitutes. Well, this guy showed me the picture of him in the shuttle uniform with the whole group of shuttle astronauts. And he told me things about a secret space program and things like this. And he talked explicitly about triangular craft. And things like this. And he said those belonged to us, but he said we had gotten that from extraterrestrial technology. You see, that started where it started going. So these are very two credible people. You could not discount them very easily, who were saying, we work for NASA, and they're not telling you everything. Then, and I'll stop talking right after this, is I went to a UFO conference in like July, or I think it was July of 96, July, August, in Denver. I thought, I got to find out more about this subject, and I just got curious. And there I found more credible witnesses. Dr. Roger Lear, the implants. There was his associate. I forgot the guy's name, the guy that worked with Dr. Roger Lear back then. And we got to handle these implants. And there were a lot of credible people there, more than I would thought. I didn't know what to expect at a UFO conference. So I found a lot of credible people. So this all kind of hit me in the space of a few months. And that's how it all kind of goes together.
And when you were going from there, what was your initial thought? I mean, were you thinking, UFOs are probably real, or they might be extraterrestrial, or what was when you started looking into it? What was your initial reaction?
A lot of my initial information was from Courtney, since he had written Cosmic Voyage. And in that book, he described viewing grays and Martians and things like this. So I got a lot of the information from him, and I might not have been too critical back then, so I kind of believed what he believed about it. But you have to imagine we're kind of in a group there at the Holiday Inn, so there's a lot of time to talk to other people, a lot of time, because we're living there and working there during the day. So you're talking to a lot of people, and you kind of, since it was a new topic for me, it wasn't entirely new. I have to tell you, I had a UFO sighting with my mom in the Everglades, but I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
I was just a 10-year-old or something, 12 maybe.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to make of it, but my mom said, hey, it's a UFO. It's this kind of green glowing object above us, very big, with a kind of a even pattern of lights or dots or something. We had binoculars, so you could see it really close up, and it wasn't anything I could identify. And so way back even then, I was like, what is this? And I had read a couple books, a few. I read Mothman Prophecies by John Keel as a teenager, and then I came across Timothy Good's book, Above Top Secret. I believe that was while I was at college or something, kind of around that time. But it wasn't anything I ever talked to anybody about, and no one in graduate school ever mentioned any of this stuff. So it kind of faded away. So when I came back to Courtney, kind of the interest kind of was there again. Again, I had my own sighting, and it did feel quite something that really did not fit ordinary description of reality. So that's kind of how it all started. So I kind of, got involved with Courtney, and then I ended up teaching there, encountered more people, and I worked with Courtney for about a year. I'm still on his board of directors for Farsight Institute. And then I started my own institute out here in Boulder, Colorado, the Mount Baldy Institute. And have been teaching RV. I taught RV to a lot of people. I have online classes so people can kind of study anytime they want, watch the videos. And so to kind of answer your question, James, these topics kind of go together just because it opens up your aperture to get involved with something like RV. And I think now that when you open up that aperture to allow like more ideas and about what could be real that you might not have believed in earlier, you start encountering more people who are interested in it, more evidence, and it just sort of grows. You go to conferences, you get curious, you start asking questions, you encounter more witnesses, and eventually, I mean, you write a book about it. The book Black Swan Ghost is only really about my encounters with UFO ET witnesses, not like I sought people out. They kind of know you're involved with RV, and they sometimes say, hey, I got to tell you something like that. Maybe they never even talked to anyone before. These are witnesses who never did an interview. Great. There are a lot of great people out there like that who've never talked for whatever reason. And, being an open-minded person, I have to say, open-minded and scientific, you have to go with the evidence. If you're encountering people who've encountered this phenomena and you go to conferences and you read and you do your research like other people have done in this field, and you say, this is like an ignored topic in academia. I mean, this is a good topic. You've got government interest, government disinformation, which isn't unusual. Lots of witnesses, lots of verifiable evidence, and trace cases on the ground, pilots, military witnesses. It's a great topic. And yet it's very mysterious. So it's a great topic. And so I began to wonder, well, how come no one's talking about this? I mean, how come there's no departments in academia? And then I began to believe that our society was censoring out a lot of important topics, not only RV. I mean, admittedly, that was classified, so you don't expect people to know about it. But still, when I talked to people, I said I had done it, I encountered a lot of skepticism, irrational skepticism. And I began to find there are a lot of topics that we weren't told about in school. Basically, cut a long story short again, you basically begin to come to the conclusion that our description of reality is incomplete. Not wrong. I mean, the one we're taught in school. It's not wrong. It's incomplete. There's just a lot more going on, just in the way that Einsteinian general relativity planted Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics works at low velocities, but it's not a complete description. That's kind of how I came to view what's going on around us, is there's a lot more phenomena that are real.
One quick question. Yeah, you
Yeah,
brought
go
up Einstein, and it's fairly well known from people who followed him a little bit more closely that he came up with a lot of his ideas regarding gravity and relativity from these thought experiments. Do you think he was doing kind of an armchair version of remote viewing to get some of these revelations?
Well, Frank, that's a really good question. And it's something we all think about a lot because you get a lot of creative people like him, creative scientists.
Tesla's another one who's
Tesla
exactly,
would be another one where, and many scientists, when they use their imagination and are able to come up with correct descriptions of reality, not using it from formal analysis. They obviously had a lot of training, but Einstein was a patent clerk before this, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so you wonder how people like that, admittedly, they're geniuses, but is there more than just IQ? And I'd have to say, yeah, I would have to agree with you. I think they're doing a type of RV because I think RV is a subset of ways that we interact with parallel realities. And if you can move your mind around through different realities, a little beyond the one that we're in right now, you would see alternatives that don't exist yet, but could exist, have a potential to exist. And a lot of people have written books about this sort of idea where, they talk about adjacent potential possibilities. They use very complex language because they don't talk about parallel realities because they're not familiar with it, but they talk about the adjacent possible and how imagination is important, kind of not just in science, but in music and all sorts of creative endeavor. So to answer your question, yeah, I would say it's similar to RV because they're moving around into what we call the future to look at solutions and possibilities. Tesla was the same way. I mean, apparently he would see his inventions before he created them and could move them around in his mind and see how they worked. So I would agree. It's a type of RV. I think so. That's my view.
Okay. Yeah, interestingly enough, Grant Cameron, he talks about downloads and some of these inventions, inventors, and musicians who get these downloads of information that end up becoming, these big things. Just really briefly, how if somebody wanted to tap into these, adjacent potentialities, how would they do that? Through practicing remote viewing, or what means would they use?
Well, personally,
for everybody.
No, it's a good question. Yes, it is sort of different from everybody, but I would have to say that when you use your imagination, you're doing a type of time travel. That's my belief now. Now, I know that sounds kind of radical, but I've been thinking about all this now for 20 years about how all this works. Why are these topics associated together? Why do they seem to go together? Why do you get so much resistance from mainstream science? And I would have to say the only way it would make sense is if what we call imagination is a type of time travel ability that we all have to see alternative possibilities. Because I think when you look around you in your room or wherever you are right now and just change the color of one thing to another color, that's the only reason you can do that in your mind is because it's a real parallel reality to the one that you're in now. Now, it's a very slight change, but that technically is a parallel reality, right? And that's how I see it now. I don't know if that would satisfy your question. I mean, I don't know if that you like that answer, but that's the way I see it. Imagination and RV are related because they're all involved in looking at slight different versions of the reality we're in right now, or sometimes very large differences. But they're all parallel realities. Yeah.
No, that gets down to the gist of it. I mean, that honestly, that's a whole lecture within itself of adjacent potentialities, parallel universes, fractals, and other topics you talked about.
Well, let me just say one more thing about that. I did create it seemed to me that it made so much sense. I created another set of classes out of that. Originally, I was just teaching RV, which I call resonant viewing, because I don't think it's really remote. Because if it's parallel realities, they're right next to you. They're not really far away. So I called it resonant viewing. But I developed another class that I call human fusion. It's a class I teach once in a while, like a small group coaching class, to show people how to use their imagination in a productive way. It's a kind of an extension of RV. I think you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw that on your website. I was wondering what that was. Where do you teach these classes? You teach there online? People can
I teach them online. The human fusion class is through a group teleconference call, so people take it from other countries. And I'm doing some classes in Denver in November. If you're in the Denver area, I'm doing like a lecture about the multiverse and evidence for the multiverse in Denver on November 11th. And then a week later at the same location, I'm doing a one-day RV class. So sometimes I do them in locations. We did an RV class in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho last May. So sometimes I do them in physical locations and sometimes it's online. The RV classes are recorded so people can kind of do self-study.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting to another topic, because it's, the first video that I saw from you was the Blue Shift video. And to me, that was fascinating. Especially, from field experience. If you've seen some of the phenomena, you see oftentimes blue flashes. And I'm talking about confirmable anomalies, not weather phenomena or conventional man-made satellites. But you'll see like a skyquake or what people call flash bulb or something like that, and you'll see a blue flash. And so when I saw your video on that, I was pretty fascinated. And then how that tied together with other stuff. And you had mentioned you went to the IRVA conference and saw how Puthoff talked about some stuff as well. Can you get into that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, James. We all knew Hal Puthoff from RV, right? He was the one with Russell Targ who worked with Ingo Swann and Pat Price and other psychics to determine if this was a real phenomena. Could it be used in a practical way, the way governments use information, stuff like that. And
also, I just want to add in, not as many people mentioned, but back in those very early days at Stanford Research Institute, Jacques Vallée was also involved.
That's right. Jacques Vallée was involved.
Interesting.
And he was at one of the IRVA conferences as the keynote speaker.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Before it became government and classified, he was involved in the project.
Yeah, he was working there. Jacques Vallée was working there. He's never talked about it that much that I'm aware of. Because we know him more as the UFO guy, right? But
yeah,
you see the link from the very beginning here?
Yeah.
So Jacques Vallée is involved, and he is interested in RV, and he also has a point of view that there's something interdimensional about UFOs. It's not just little guys getting in a metal ship and flying over here from their planet.
Yeah.
And it's also because of his experience with UFO witnesses. He told me about this personally, that they have psychic experiences before their encounter and after, like the Mansfield, Ohio incident in 1973 with Colonel Coyne and the National Guardsmen in the helicopter. He told me that they all reported, or some of them reported, psychic experiences before the event happened and afterwards that were very unusual.
I've not heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's a great case, too.
Yeah, and that's the high strangeness aspect that's so important to this.
It is, guys. It doesn't fit into these boxes we have in our minds, right? Because you could understand an object. Okay, it's approaching the helicopter. It looks, like a submarine in the air, and the blue-green light that goes, all that, right? That goes into the cockpit, and then the compass stops working, right? The radio doesn't function. The compass has to be replaced. It's so out of whack. It's spinning around after the incident. But then why would that be associated with psychic phenomena even before the event? And Kathleen Martin's talked about this too at some of the Open Minds UFO conferences, that these phenomena tend to be associated with UFO encounters. It's mysterious. But to go back to the question, just to rewind a second. So Hal Puthoff knows about this too, because we knew him as an RV guy, and I've known Hal for a while, meeting him at IRVA and asking him questions. And I've asked him about UFO questions, not realizing that he was directly involved in the research. But as he told us, I'm just revealing public information that he told us at the IRVA SSC event, Society for Scientific Exploration. It was a joint conference in Las Vegas last June. And he really blew everyone away because he said that he has been involved in studying the materials from UFOs, the metals and other materials that these craft are made of, and that he's been doing this for a while, and that the government never stopped studying it even though that's what they said when Project Blue Book was canceled. He told us right there. The only thing with that is they didn't stop studying it.
Yeah.
You're aware of the Bolender memo where they said that important cases that affected national security never were sent to Project Blue Book?
Yeah, and we had Paul Dean on here
Good.
talking about Opera 3.
Paul Dean, yeah, I've been following Paul Dean ever since I heard him interviewed a couple of years ago and looking at his blog. Right. And he talks about these alternative channels, service and Opera 3 and all these ways that they would communicate. So it turns out to be right on. I mean, because Hal told us that he mentioned the Bolender memo. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
People in our area have always been interested in the Bolender memo because Stanton Friedman talked to Carol Bolender, right? And he said, yeah, we never sent it. There were other secure channels, and the stuff that really was good never got to Blue Book. And that's what Hal said, too. He said the Bolender memo showed us. He didn't reveal anything new. Hal showed us what's already in the public record. So the government was concerned about this the whole time. And what Hal emphasized to us, his angle on it, obviously this is the TTSA angle with Tom DeLonge and so forth, is they're concerned about our national adversaries getting ahead in this technology before we figure out how it works.
Yeah.
So Hal has been involved with this, and he did give us a lecture about how the materials work. He only mentioned one type of material. I did attempt to find out about the other materials, and I was told that no, you can't. We're not allowed to talk about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
He said he didn't say it's classified. He said I'm not allowed to talk about it. So I am assuming that there are many other types of materials, bismuth, magnesium being one of them. The arts parts and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Bob Bigelow being involved in storing the materials at Bigelow Aerospace. That came out in the New York Times article last December. But Hal told us that these materials, if you beam terahertz, wavelengths at the bismuth magnesium, it creates a shift somehow in the speed of light, so that these craft don't operate faster than the speed of light. But for us, their speed of light's different, so in a sense, it's faster than ours. Something like that. And it creates a blue shift in that direction. I mean, some physicists wrote me on YouTube and said it doesn't always look blue. It's shifted in the blue direction. That's an important point. But nonetheless, Hal did say this is, if you shift those frequencies, you end up, our spectrum ends up in ultraviolet, and infrared ends up in visible light. And he said this is why people sometimes get injured from contact, is because they're now exposed to ultraviolet light in very high frequencies. And I did interview someone on it's on my YouTube channel, Gary, the guy that worked at Minot Air Force Base in the early 70s, with his colleague in the missile security guard. They were burned by a UFO taking off near one of these silos. The whole base was put on alert. There were about 5 or 6 objects, as he told me, in the area that night. And they encountered one, and he was burned, as was all of the Jeep itself was discolored. Their rifles were discolored. So I said, look, that's what Hal's talking about, because Gary didn't report nausea or anything like that that's associated with ionizing radiation. He just reported burned, and they gave him a cream. He said it helped on the right side of his face. And the other guy in the SAT truck, the security alert team truck, was also burnt on the right side of the face from the direction of the they said it was blinding. So, this is associated with all the northern tier sightings in the 60s and 70s around missile bases, nuclear missile bases. Right. Well, we're all familiar with that. So, in any case, this is what Hal talked about. And, for me, James, it was amazing to have someone with his level of credibility come forward and tell us, for those of us who've been studying this, that, it's been real the whole time. And it's the different people that are involved with this there's such a high level of classification. They don't talk to each other. So it's not just they're covering it up. They're covering it up from each other. You can kind of see how complex it is. within the government. Yeah, it's not just that there's this monolithic government is not telling us the truth. It's that there's these stovepipes who, because of the way special access programs work, don't communicate with other stovepipes, if that's the way it is. So that's what Hal told us, and I thought it was. I was surprised it wasn't some sort of major news headline that, you know, someone that's worked who's worked with the government since the 1960s on classified research comes out and says it's real and we're trying to figure out how it works, and maybe we have figured out how some of it works. Isn't a major news headline, because I mean basically it implies there are other aerospace technologies and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and the case you mentioned where there were physical effects, you know, in retrospect, I'm thinking, you know, it'd be interesting to know if Kit Green was involved with the studying the effects of that, because I know that they're kind of looking back and trying to find people like that and testing their DNA. So from there, I want to get into. You know, you mentioned on one of your YouTube videos when you went to Bigelow Aerospace, right?
Yeah, we did.
And you asked them about the if they're storing any of the parts over there.
I asked 3 people over there. Yeah. Okay. First, I mean, I thought it was a fair question. It was it's in the New York Times article from last December. Was it December 16th, 17th last year?
Yeah.
That the materials were stored at Bigelow Aerospace. This is coming from the ATIP people, right? I guess everyone knows, you know, that secret government program within the DoD, within the Pentagon, to figure out, you know, what these craft are and see if they, you know, you could reproduce the technology, so forth. So-called ATIP program, or, you know,
ATIP, which is OSAP, which is ATIP
or OSAP.
Again.
Yeah. You know, it's weird because we don't. You know, that type of disclosure, I mean, we got a little piece of it, then we learned there was an OSAP, right? And then we learned that ATEP never ended. It's just funding, and right, we don't know who's involved now. I mean, that's what Elizondo said. It's strange. I think it's really weird. We get little pieces of this thing.
Well, and Elizondo has stated multiple times, especially more recently, he's been emphasizing it, that just because ATIP, the official idea or proposal, came in 2007, doesn't mean that there wasn't an ATIP-like program before. And George Knapp has said that as well. And, you know, I think they're steering in that direction for a reason.
Yes, that doesn't mean there wasn't another one. And I think, as Nick Pope said, right, at the Open Minds UFO conference earlier this year, he said, how do you know that's the ATIP program? I mean, that's one of them, right? Yeah. But he said, is that the UFO program, or is that one of them? I mean, so tricky, isn't it? So sly. Yeah. I mean, because he knows, coming from the MOD, that just because they admit to one program, is that the main program? Are there, you know, just it's like trying to put a puzzle together. And I'm hoping one day that this is a little more transparent, since we're all paying for it, you know. I mean,
oh god, yeah. And Jeremy Corbell on a radio show, maybe not even a month ago, had stated, he said, "I'll say this now, I'll put this out there, and I'll be correct later. I'm going to put my name on the line and say there are at least 4 other programs that we will probably see." I don't know if we're going to see them declassified, or we're going to learn about their existence.
Yes. So, I mean, that's very interesting. I didn't hear that interview. Was it with you guys? He did that interview?
It was with Phenomenon Radio.
Phenomenon. Yeah, that's a very interesting comment, because people like us talk to people. And sometimes you run into someone who's had quite a high position within the intelligence or military community, who's retired now, and they will tell you these things, but they don't repeat it, or they'll, you know, for a variety of reasons, they'll tell you, and then they don't want you to repeat it exactly the way you heard it from them, so you have to modify it so you don't give too much away. Yeah. And I'm sure Jeremy ran into these people too, doing his documentary and the type of research he does, because, you know, there's just got to be more. We know they were looking into the Soviet PK program and monitoring that. There's a lot more, but we still don't know very much about it. There's a lot to learn about this from our own history, you know, secret history.
Yeah.
that we all
Oh, yeah.
deserve to know about because it was decades ago, and we should find out what the government was studying. What did they find? I learned personally they proved PK was real. They knew PK was real. They knew the Soviets were very good at it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No doubt, 100% confidence that it's real. And yet it was never made into a public announcement. It wasn't even shared with the RV program over at DIA. So it's special. It's compartmentalization. When I asked this individual, why didn't you tell the remote viewers at the DIA program who are working for you, right? Working for the U.S. government. It all has to do with the compartmentalization and this idea of protecting, the sources and the methods. And that comes first for these people before sharing the information does. That's why the rest of us have to make sure that we talk about it, because the people that have seen it for whatever reason can't talk about it or don't feel it's a good idea to talk about it, purely from the idea of not sharing information that could affect existing operations. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So let me just answer your question about Bigelow, since that's what you...
Yeah. No, that was a good little tangent, though.
A little good tangent. I want to talk about Bigelow for a second. We did go there, and I did ask 3 people. I think since it came out in the article, I asked the guard on the bus. They came in and checked our IDs because Bigelow does work with the Department of Defense. There are regulations about who can visit defense contractors, and only American citizens can visit defense contractors on educational tours. So we had to have our IDs checked, and they had to be, some sort of security check, in the weeks before we went there. So I asked the guard, I said, are we going to get to see he said, any questions, right? I said, yeah. Are we going to, he was talking about not bringing in recording equipment, no photos, in the Bigelow buildings, right. That's right. And he said, any questions? He's standing right next to me. So I raised my hand. Yeah. Are we going to get to see the building with the ET materials? And he said to me in a completely serious voice, there are buildings here that even I'm not allowed to go in.
Wow.
So I thought, whoa. I mean, this is a guy that's in charge of security at the facility. They have like 20 security guards there, right? These are serious guys, and if they're not allowed in the building, well, what could be in something you don't allow your security guards to go in? They're allowed in the other, what could be more important than the space modules we're seeing that you can't go in to see, right? Who does security for those buildings if it's not those guys? Okay, so we go in the building, and there's Bob Bigelow, and he says, I used to be a member of SSE, and he was on 60 Minutes about a year or 2 ago, right? Saying that he's a believer in all this phenomena. His parents had a daylight sighting right there in Vegas, right in front of the car.
Yeah,
and he was an early sponsor of SSE and so forth. So we can't ask him any questions, but we get our tour guides, who are not tour guides. They're people who work in the company. In our case, we had 2 vice presidents as tour guides. So at some point during the tour of the crew capsules, which are very interesting, it's these crew capsules that are going to be launched by Elon Musk's spacecraft, and they're designed to be in orbit for really long periods of time and even go to other planets and stuff, maybe even work on the surface of Mars and things like this. And it's the mechanics. It's really 3D stuff. It's how do you get people have to live in there, right? So it's fascinating. But one of them I asked, I said, there was a New York Times article, last year. It said, you guys have ET material stored here at the facility. Is it true? He said, we don't comment on news and media. Okay. Well, so that was one attempt to find out. And then the other tour guide, I asked him towards the end of the tour, he said, any more questions? So, my hand goes up again.
Like this guy.
Guys, we have to do this or we're not going to find out.
Yeah.
Said, we're told that there are ET materials stored at this facility. Is it true? I said, where are they? And he said, they're all around us. Kind of vague answer.
Oh man.
And laughed.
Yeah.
Like, they're in the sky. I don't know what he meant. He was kind of dodging the question.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from somebody I talked to at the SSE meeting, I talked to someone who said they had been in the Bigelow facility with the ET materials. So, because I asked someone later about this, and they said, no, I've been there. So,
did they say they saw anything, or they were just saying they were in the facility?
They had been in the building.
Yeah.
So those are my kind of 4 encounters around the Bigelow Aerospace. And, I would have to say I'm pretty sure that is where the government does store the ET materials. And the reason why would the government do that? It's plausible deniability. In essence, they can say, we don't have any materials. The government is not in the ET materials business, right?
Yeah.
And in some sense, that would kind of be true, though in a court of law, they would sort of be questionable, right? But just on the face of it, they can say, we don't have anything, no FOIA request, right? It's at private contractors, and then the private contractor gets to, I guess, develop it and try to see how it works and use it in their own. Well, you have to wonder if, let's say they figured out how some of these materials worked now or in the future, who gets that? Does Bob Bigelow get to employ that in his technology, or is it shared? A lot of legal questions there, don't you think?
Oh, a ton. And, a lot of, what they're talking about with these metamaterials is that they seem to be created in a zero gravity environment. And George Knapp commented that maybe part of Bob Bigelow's, vision is to have one of these, habitats up in space where he can create an environment like that to actually conduct, to produce materials like that.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And I was told similar things during the conference.
Yeah.
Zero-G environment there. The isotopes are not from Earth, the types of isotopes you'd find on the Earth. Just, for people that don't know what that means, it means that, the periodic elements, the elements that make a periodic table have variations in the number of neutrons. And they're slight deviations from the kind that we find most of the time, alternate versions of the material, and with more or less neutrons. And these materials are made of those isotopes that are very rare to find on Earth. You can kind of tell by looking at the elements that these metamaterials are made from, that they're not from the ones you wouldn't make it that way on Earth. I was even told by one person that some of the isotopic variations are in the number of electrons, which isn't even how modern scientists would, isotopes can be created, but it takes a lot of work and energy to bombard a material and change the number of neutrons or electrons in it and keep it stable. Yeah. So that's another clue that these are not materials from Earth. I mean, we heard Hal and George Knapp say that they've looked at every database of every country to see if there's anything even remotely like these metamaterials. And they can't find anything. And then the isotopes are different than you find on Earth. So it's pretty strong evidence that this is coming from somewhere else. It doesn't totally rule out a secret space program maybe that got materials from asteroids and assembled it up there in space, right? I mean, we can't totally rule that out.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be some kind of black program, classified, secret technology. I mean, for sure.
It could be, but they don't think so, because we heard Steve Justice from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works during the TTSA event. Remember they had on YouTube in October last year? Yeah. And he said, it's online, people can listen. He said, this isn't our stuff.
And I mean, think about it too. The probability of, let's say, maybe some of these materials are from the late 1940s, because there were several crashes then, and allegedly Art's Parts is actually from Roswell. We don't know if that's true or not.
That's right.
Because the guy kind of sent it in anonymously. But there was another crash around that time, also just within a few days of Roswell. And say these materials back then, are some of the materials being studied. What secret space program, could do that in the 1940s?
No, I have to agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very far.
No, that's a very good point, James. I mean, this has been going on for decades, and it just doesn't quite seem plausible that you had this in the 60s or the 50s or the 40s. I mean,
even the Ubatuba case in Brazil was, I think, in the 1950s or 60s.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, maybe they did go in afterwards, and there is a black program that tried to replicate it the best they could. But still, those cases from all the way back then, I don't think anybody's touching that with any kind of technological stick.
No, it just doesn't seem plausible, even if, I mean, maybe the military doesn't have the latest technology, but it seems doubtful they'd be decades behind what the government really had. Why would you spend billions and trillions? Well, you can always have counter arguments, but I just don't buy it. I don't think you would be in situations where you lose, like Vietnam. If you had superior technology that could have just accomplished what you were attempting to accomplish in a much faster manner.
Yeah, and also you have Rendlesham. So you think that this black program that's trying to hide and protect this technology and develop it is going to go above a secret, nuclear facility that the UK has no idea that we're storing nukes and stuff there.
Yeah, right. Well, you wouldn't want to attract attention to it. No, exactly. That's a very good point. That's an excellent point. Yeah.
And then just make a parade on the airbase and affect crew members with physical effects like a John Burroughs and others.
Yes.
There's no way. And allegedly TTSA has some kind of material from that incident. From
Rendlesham. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
TTSA put up a video and, had papers of material analysis. And before they put up a version, and some, they got to keep up because, people are stopping, pausing the video, zooming in and analyzing the videos very closely.
Oh, yeah.
And and so I think Twitter user Jay actually went back and he put the lab that analyzed the materials. He was able to zoom that much in. And it said, we can dig up and find out what company that was, but it said Rendlesham Forest.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Okay, that explains why that video was taken down, because they put up a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They re-uploaded it blurred out.
Got it. That is amazing, because I remember going to the video and I'm saying, hey, it's a video with Hal and talking about the materials. I mean, I love it. Let's go take a look. And it wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, what happened? Where'd the video? And now you're explaining to me what must have happened. Is it somebody saw something really specific in the document with Rendlesham? Oh my God.
Yeah. And they have allegedly 7 materials, the arts parts, the Rendlesham, piece. What other one? The Ed's piece from Ohio. This guy Keith, he did a really good article on it. I'm not sure if that's that's kind of what people were able to find. And I guess that would be 4 other pieces. I heard through the grapevine that one other piece is another piece from New Mexico, but it's not from Roswell. It's from one of the other New Mexico crashes.
That might have been the one that Diana Pasulka turned up.
No, it is. It is. But yeah, okay. I didn't want to give away the location. But yeah, that's the one. That's one of the pieces, because that site that Diana went to, it's not like that was a secret. It was like it kind of was like amongst some ufologists, but there was a guy who had pieces from there, and several researchers had those pieces. And I guess that case was actually pretty good, because the guy had the material analyzed, and he was also saying some of these things back then in 2004, because that site has been kind of known for a little bit among some researchers, that the same thing. It looks like it was created in a zero gravity environment, because the iron would have like bled down into the other materials and is clearly separated, layered, when that should not be possible. And then there's a few other materials too, which I'm not even sure about.
Yeah, they likely have their hands on some of the Ubatuba material as well. There
Yeah,
are a
whatever.
few fragments from that case that Peter Sturrock looked into closely. He's a professor at Stanford, so there's connections there. They know each other. I know that they do. So it's certainly quite possible that that's another area where they picked up a few of the fragments that they're looking at.
Yeah, and Valet has quite a few pieces, and Valet, he wrote the forward for Peter Levenda's book, so um, I don't know what kind of connection they have, but obviously, I'm sure he wouldn't mind handing over a few materials for analysis if they're going to front the money.
Yeah, it's expensive. A lot of guys have tried to have curious pieces tested. Well, they did do it, and it ended up costing them a lot of money, and they got a negative answer too. It's just like yesterday, Elizondo was spending a lot of time at his conference over in Europe, over in Italy, where he and DeLong did a little bit of a presentation yesterday that was very good. But he also said he doesn't expect all these are going to pan out.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I got to say something interesting about this, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, just to comment on this, because in the crop circles in 1997, I encountered a woman from Italy who I used to run into like a couple years in a row in the crop circles. And she said that she knew a pilot from Aviano Air Base whose job, he had told her, was to find pieces of UFOs.
Oh, wow.
Pieces of metal would come off occasionally, and then he would track them down, and then a team on the ground would pick them up. And I thought, I mean, back then, is this science? Is this for real? I mean, why?
Yeah,
pieces of metal, but now it's starting to click.
Yeah, Jacques Vallée, he mentioned ejectiles from many sightings, and there's actually a case. Yeah, ejectiles. He did a whole video on this.
Oh, he did.
The 2017 Contact in the Desert, which Frank came across. I had never even seen it, and Frank has a great article on the Metamaterials where there's a Ask Me Anything with Gary Nolan, and he's, I think, Frank, you got the video linked in that article, right?
Yeah. A few things have come up since then. It was kind of news to me, this whole metamaterial study, and it's turning out that it's a phenomenon just like any of the others, a pattern that goes way back. They've been looking at this kind of stuff for years, but TTSA has been a catalyst and bringing it all back up again, and there's a long history of it.
Yeah, and there's some pretty things in there. It's not just like hooey,
Oh no! They're serious as a heart attack. They think they're onto something.
Yeah,
what that is, I don't know, but they think they're onto something. That's pretty certain.
Yeah, Gary Nolan is going to be in a documentary soon. It's just, he said it's probably just going to be a small part that him and Jacques Vallée analyzing these materials. And, it turns out that, Gary actually created a device in his lab for his own work on, DNA and cellular biology. And he says it just happens to work perfectly for analyzing these materials. So there you go, right?
To look at the big picture behind this, guys, the big picture around this, this is very significant because science is always asking for material evidence. I mean, this has been the big criticism of the whole field of UFOs for so long. Where is the material evidence? Do you have a piece of something? You probably heard that kind of
Sure.
Yeah.
You show us a piece of something, and we'll believe. How come there's never any physical evidence? That has been the criticism of this ever since I remember going back as a kid. There's no pieces, right? Yeah. Well, now there are pieces. So science has a choice here. It can either keep trying to ignore this subject and become increasingly irrelevant, or it could say, well, we have respected researchers like Gary Nolan and Jacques Vallée and others who are Hal Puthoff, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to have to say, like I said about remote viewing, we were wrong. It works. It's real. And I would imagine that could lead to quite a sea change in the whole our society's whole view of this subject, because we have a materialistic based science. That's the challenge with RV. There's really no material there to show. You have people's sessions on paper and statistics with lots of studies, but you don't see how it's working. But if you have pieces, and I guess this is what TTSA is attempting to do, to show us and Congress and everyone, look, we've got pieces. We're figuring out how they work. And at some point, somebody has to give way here and admit they were wrong, or just say, okay, it's real. Because I don't see any other outcome. What do you guys think?
I think that this genie is not going back in the bottle.
Right.
And I think that, allegedly Elizondo and others have alluded to the fact that we're getting more of these declassified videos in January, February.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're supposed to be more fascinating than the last ones.
Okay.
Also, we have their TV series are coming out. Which of course they're hyping and they want that TV series to do well. So, and of course, it's, going to be part of their income for their perpetual organization, their perpetual funding mechanism. But it seems like they are saving some bombshells for this series, including the materials and a lot of other things that go with it to kind of, hype their show. But it seems like there's a lot of content in there. That is going to be dealing with this stuff. It's going to, the series is going to follow their journey going through all this, meeting with John Podesta. They said, they're going to go to Area 51 in the documentary, NASA, and all these places, and, meeting with scientists and whoever else. But I think that the attention that they're bringing to it, like when the next few videos come out, if New York Times fails to pick it up, I'm convinced that another, heavy mainstream media outlet is going to pick it up, and that's at the very beginning of the year, and I don't see it slowing down, because it's not just that those videos are coming out. At that same time, John Burroughs and Elizondo have also alluded to that there's going to be a huge revelation of the Rendlesham Forest incident. I don't know if they're talking about maybe Elizondo, when he was working in ATIP, was able to get into some of those classified documents that disappeared, because he said he debriefed 4 members of people that were involved with Rendlesham. And John Burroughs had confirmed, he said the cat's out of the bag now. Yeah. I speak to Elizondo, and he did debrief us, whatever that means. But I think that Elizondo and TTSA are going to, they're January, February seems to be like a big time. It's not just, you have these other videos coming out, and I think the initial material analysis is also coming out at that time too.
Wow, that's exciting. It would be really great to, get confirmation about these materials. I've had the confirmation. It's just not public confirmation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Some of us are talking to these people, and they're telling us, listen, this stuff is anomalous.
It's anomalous. I have been told it is thousands of years ahead of our stuff. That's what I've been told over and over again. There's even one guy in my Black Swan Ghost book, Phil, who worked for a defense contractor. He worked for JPL, but this wasn't for JPL. This was a defense contractor. And he said they brought in this sample. To his group, I said, guys, the people who made this left. Can you figure out how it works? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
The people who made it aren't here anymore. And they looked at this, and I asked Phil, I said, so you really thought, you believed it was extraterrestrial? He goes, no, Simeon, I know it was. That's what he told me the last time I talked. That's how convinced they are. And these are people in tops in their field. So if they don't understand it, it doesn't leave many other people left. It doesn't leave many other options. Okay. Yeah. It's got to be somewhere else. And if it's that advanced, I always come across people who say, well, it could be some other agency. I mean, 1,000 years ahead. I don't buy it. I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Don't buy it.
Yeah. I think there's too much substance to their claims and to their, bafflement. I mean, these people are genuinely.
Bafflement is a good word. That's a very good
baffled.
Word. Yes.
That what these materials are. I mean, it's not even like, oh, I see what these people did here. No, they look at it and say, how the hell could this have been done?
That's exactly what they say. It is so far out of the ballpark. It's not remotely close to the way we make things. Not remotely close. It's a type of nanotechnology with these metamaterial properties. And just for the audience, metamaterials are, physical substances with exotic properties and can bend light, reverse refraction incidents and things like this, so that things become invisible or they look different. The wavelengths change like crystals, stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe they're programmed or designed in a way that they can blue shift.
Or interact with the quantum field directly to alter the density of the quantum, stuff like this. we don't have it. If we had it, we wouldn't be driving around in cars. Okay. So,
Yeah, and it seems like these materials are designed to be that way.
designed.
The properties are
Designed.
designed to, have those properties.
Designed to have those properties. It's just so. Well, this is, guys, it's a very exciting time to be involved with, don't you think? To be involved with this subject. I mean,
This is amazing. I mean, this is
it's been the best year since
Yeah,
my first
good.
year in was pretty
So
good,
good.
but this is pretty good too. This last year.
Right. When I got involved in '96, it was like, wow, there's a whole area of science yet to be discovered, right? With RV and precognition, all these different phenomena. It even goes into other phenomena like Bigfoot or ghosts, because you begin to wonder whether those phenomena that just sort of appear and disappear.
Yeah, if they're interdimensional or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you begin to wonder, is it all real? All these paranormal phenomena are actually normal from this point of view that we're talking about here. It's just society's is just out of date, really. I mean, society's so far behind the curve, it calls it paranormal. But it's just a very advanced type of science that things can appear and disappear. I mean, listen, if UFOs can appear and disappear, how do you know there isn't some, entity or type of creature that figured this out too? I mean, somehow along the way.
Some kind of interdimensional being, or not even that they're doing it intentionally. It just might be that wherever they happen to be, there's some kind of magnetic field shift that allows for that kind of thing. Like, they're talking about Skinwalker Ranch it's a thin area, and there might be electromagnetic anomalies that cause for this kind of interaction in certain areas or certain times.
Right. That would make sense. Something like that. And that there could be
who
other
knows? This is
Skinwalker ranches around the planet. Maybe we don't even haven't discovered them yet.
No, there are, and the ATIP or OSAP actually was involved in them.
Right. That's right.
And one of them was an event in Brazil. Sedona, Arizona, I think, is another one. And I think John Alexander writes about that in his book, Sedona, Arizona, something happening there. And John Burroughs has mentioned some stuff over there.
Sedona, right? That would be another area. Exactly. It's I was actually once asked to speak at a ghost conference at Estes Park, up at the Stanley Hotel, which is kind of the basis for The Shining. Stephen King.
Is it? No, I had no idea.
Yeah, the Stanley Hotel. It had all these sightings, the girls that would appear that are in the movie. Yeah. That was all based on what happened at the Stanley Hotel. And going up there, I was asked to speak at a ghost conference. From this point of view that you're talking about, are there areas, and these guys were particularly interested in crystals and how that related to crop circles and things like that. Are there areas where you're going to get more of this activity because of the geology of the area, or like in crop circles where it's been artificially constructed and it's kind of creating a kind of a thinness, as you talk about, like more bleed through from other
it's funny that
dimensions, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mention that, because allegedly the site that Diana went to, they found out that the area itself, like under the ground and everything, there's certain metals that are consistent, and maybe that creates an environment for some kind of high strangeness. I forget the exact metals that were prevalent in the area, but there's a high density of certain materials, of certain metals.
Yeah.
And that this guy Tyler in Diana's book American Cosmic considers that place a sacred site.
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So, but we're getting about to the end over here. We got to wrap up.
Yes. Yeah.
I trust me, I don't want to. I can go on. I'm sure we can all go on for. There's so many other topics that we can discuss that are fascinating and relevant to all these revelations going on right now, with ATIP and.
Man.
Kind of like the reinvention of ufology is kind of what we're witnessing.
Amazing. Guys, we should do this again sometime in a couple months.
Absolutely.
Or something, because it's changing it's all happening right now. And this is a great time to be involved in this area. Isn't it great that those of us who got involved with this a long time ago in the audience who are interested, that we have verification of all
Yeah,
this.
yeah, we're finally being validated through all this, you know.
Yeah.
And this is a great time to be
This show wouldn't exist if it wasn't for TTSA.
Oh, is that right? You guys started?
The environment that they created, it got us excited. James and I excited enough to get this going.
Great. I didn't know about you guys before you contacted me, and that's great. So we're all going to have a lot of things to do and study and talk about.
Even in the next few months, it seems like there's a lot of developments hinted at that are underway.
Fascinating. And
so I guess we got about 2 or 3 months to get ready to take it to the next level.
Let's do another interview sometime, and we'll carry on from where we left off today.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. I mean, you're a fascinating guy. For everybody listening, Simeon Hein, you have to check out his YouTube
and website.
And the website.
Yeah, my blog is newcrystalmind.com. Just newcrystalmind.com.
Okay, and don't you have the Mount Baldy Institute too?
Yeah, you can get to my Mount Baldy. That's my publishing company, and you can get to my virtual viewing classes, my remote viewing classes online. You can get to all of that from New Crystal Mind. But I do have online viewing classes and all sorts of stuff that people can participate in. And also,
your book is available through the website as well.
Yeah, Black Swan Ghosts is. You can find it there. That has its own website, and I would encourage people to go to the blackswanghosts.com website, because I put up videos of the witness interviews. I felt I should do this for free because they trusted me to share their story with all of you, and some of them have even passed on by now. So I just felt I should put them all up there. No login credentials needed. Just go to blackswanghosts.com and look at witness videos, and you can listen to these very credible people tell about their contact stories. And you haven't heard these witnesses before. These are just people I've encountered who've told me their stories. So
yeah, amazing.
You want to grab those links and then add them to the description on the video then, James?
Yeah, I'll put them on the description. Okay. I'm going to have to do it a little later, though.
Okay.
And next time, guys, we have to talk about crop circles, because I am.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I am still doing crop circle tours because of the weird, strange things that happen almost every summer when we're there in and around these crop circles. It's a whole nother piece of the mystery.
Do you do all those crop circle tours overseas?
Yeah, they're in the UK.
Okay.
We did it last July, and we're planning another one. And it's another example where people can go and participate and see something happen right in front of their eyes. So,
yeah. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Thank you very much, guys. Dr. Hein.
Okay, take care.
Take care.
All right, there we go. Another successful interview in the bag. Dr. Hein with some great material for us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun, and when you want to do it again, just let me know, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, take care, guys. Bye.
All right. So I will say goodbye to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. So we'll see you again real soon with another great show. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Take care.